Hi, so do you have a DC44 Dyson handheld vacuum cleaner or similar model, maybe a V6, that doesn't seem to be charging anymore? Only seems to work for a couple of seconds, then the lights flash and the light on the charger doesn't come on anymore, and therefore you think the battery is not charging. Well, before you go out and spend £30, $40 on a new battery, and then try going through the same steps that I did with mine. Didn't cost me anything to fix it in the end. So here in this video we detail stripping apart the battery on the Dyson, a couple of screws to remove on it after taking the canister off, one at the back, one behind the filter. Battery comes off, and as you can see by the marks on the battery, I've had to prise apart the battery. You can get to that. There's some lithium battery cylinder type cells in here, roughly about 3.6 volts each. So see if your battery's knackered, you can measure the individual voltage of each of those batteries inside there. So there's 6 of those, and so it produces something like, it says 22 volts or so on the back there. We'll just about see. Yep, 22.2. Took mine apart, it was about 21.5 or something. So the batteries were a little bit depleted. Quite tricky to get this battery apart. You have to get a good screwdriver in there, give it a whack, try and break the seal. So watch the rest of this video for seeing what the problem was with mine. I also took apart the socket where it was charging. I thought that might have been given a bit of a dodgy connection, since the charging light was coming on and off when I wiggled that around a little bit. What it turned out to be in the end was just a loose wire in the charging plug. But if you want to diagnose your particular model and maybe have some other issues, then following is where we dismantle it all. To remove the battery, you have to undo this Phillips screwdriver in here, quite a long one, and there's also a screw that's got to remove just under the filter, like so, and then the battery, once the screw is being removed, we'll just pull out from the bottom, like so. To dismantle the battery, it has clips that are held in this position, here, and I think at the back as well. I'll just dismantle it and put it back together again, just to show you. But you have to be quite firm, get a good strong screwdriver in these positions. I actually found it easier to whack on the end of the screwdriver with a hammer, which allows the screwdriver to penetrate into the plastic, and then levering it will get the two halves of the plastic apart. And that's partially separated. Quite a struggle to lever the two apart, so be extra careful with this one, because as you can see the circuit board is right underneath. So you can see where the clips are, where the plastics go through, these tiny little holes here, 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 and also the other side. So you can see after it's been released from the main clips, then these two halves just pull apart. And then to get these pieces of plastic off, you have to push in a little clip there and gradually pull it up while pushing down on this socket, and then that plastic piece should come off with a piece of wiggling off the end, and then that just lifts off like so. So let's check whether the charger is working. Here's the plug that comes out of the base station charger. It seems to be actually like a 3-pin type connection. Let's just put the light on. So we have a central pin, and then an inner part of the connector. You can just see it shiny metal on the inside of the cylinder, and then of course on the outside we've got metal as well. So we've actually got 3 connections. Here's, if I just use a tiny piece of wire just to connect to the inside of the cylinder, then we have 25 volts, and on the central pin, which we'll measure just by pushing the end of the probe down there, we actually have 18 volts, interestingly. So the charger is producing some voltage, at least over 24 volts, which I'm guessing is what the charger will require because it typically outputs, I think, 22 volts. So is the voltage getting onto the charging circuit is the question. So we can measure that on these wires here. The black and white seem to connect to this charging plug. These little brown wires go to connectors on the top which go off to the motor unit. I've got some very tiny bits of wire wrapped around my multimeter probes. I've got the multimeter is currently reading 25 volts because right now we are charging. So yeah, the light's flashing. But if we just wiggle this connector, and we see the voltage will go up and down all over the place. Let's just bring the meter a bit closer. So yeah, if we tiny little movement, the voltage goes off. Obviously it stops charging, and so probably, as is not too surprising, what's happened is the connector has either oxidized or got worn out, as just by wiggling this basically makes it charge or not. So yeah, if we push it to one side, you see the voltage goes up to 25 volts. So that's where a problem lies. I don't know whether we can fix the connector. It could be tricky, but we'll have a look. So having established that this is connector, that just slots out by pushing it. It could, I suppose, get any one of these connectors. But I think by pulling these tabs apart, we can probably dismantle it further, see what we can see. Maybe it's just as simple as brushing up some of the metal or bending out a pin. And interestingly, while we're at it, you see you've actually only got two connections to it. One to the outside of the cylinder, one to the inside. The central pin is not connected. We're in the process of just prising off that metal shroud around it. Lots of little bent clips that surround it, so you need to get a screwdriver in there to bend those out. And then with the shroud off, the two halves actually just pull apart like so. So we have some inner pieces of copper and some outer pieces, which you can just about see there. There we go. So I think with a little bit of scratching and cleaning up those and a little bit of bending out of those inner ones, we should be able to get a better connection onto our plug, which should hopefully fix it. So just to show what we're doing there, we get that screwdriver and we can poke it in so that we can bend out that inner piece of copper. It's hard showing this one-handed because the other hand is holding the camera. But by getting the screwdriver in there, bend out those inner pieces of metal and scratch the outer surface of them at the same time, and we'll bend in these inner pieces of metal. So hopefully that should clamp the plug a lot better and therefore provide a better connection. And when reassembling, do you have to bend out the end of these copper little prong things with a pair of pliers? So grab it at the end, just give it a twist that way, because when it fits back in its housing, these little end pieces have got to be tucked away. And as you can see here, when we push the two halves back together again, those little copper prongs have got to sit just behind the shroud of the plastic at the top. If they poke out, you'll probably have problems getting the plug back in again. Let's see if the plug fits before we reassemble completely. So having now improved the socket part of the connector, I actually now find that bending the wire makes the voltage come on or bend back the other way disappear. So actually there's obviously a break in the cable to the plug as well, which we need stripped down. Probably take a little bit off the cable and fix that. So that may have been the problem all along, although it didn't do any harm to improve the socket as well. So now we'll open up this cable by slicing with a scalpel first, and then prise it apart to get to the cables. So interestingly, there's 3 cables in here, even though there's only 2 of them used. So what we'll do is give a good tug on each one to see if we can work out where the Liz connection is. So straight away I pulled on the red one, and you can see the end of the wire just liberated itself, actually poking outside of the cable, and the plastic stretched very easily, which shows it wasn't actually connected. And then we cut back the connector some more to expose the end of the red wire where we can actually connect to it, and then we'll just join the two. Okay, so there we go, new bit of wire connected. Obviously we're going to wrap that in insulation tape. Let's just see how well that works. And now we find that the charger is charging. See the light on the charger there. No matter how much we actually wiggle this round, or the cable seems to stay permanently charging. And so that should be it. So now we just got to reassemble things. And that's how to fix your Dyson DC44 or similar model that's not charging correctly. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.